Thing number five, Gary, talking the dollar milkshake theory. Don't worry, we're going to explain thing number five, turning it to Alex, revisiting the dollar milkshake theory, why a soaring dollar matters.
Yeah, so traditionally when we do the five things, we always have a educational piece. And for the last few months, Andrew has been doing it. So this is the first week I've done the educational piece for the five things. And I thought it was appropriate that in this last week we saw the dollar, regain some strength. The Dixie got back to 108. And you know, the dollar confuses a lot of people. I mean, they look at the US national debt, and it's, I believe, as of recording, it's around 36 trillion. And, there are very, cogent arguments to be made that because of that, that the dollar will weaken. And, Brent Johnson outlines this kind of very interesting framework for kind of understanding the monetary system slightly with a kind of slightly more nuanced view, which is that yes, the US is in a lot of debt, but so are all the other countries. That's the first point. The second part is, you know, in the 1950s, after World War II, there was innovations in the UK, where I'm from Midland Bank, where they started this offshore market, which is known as the Eurodollar market, whereby if I'm in the UK and you're in Germany and we do trade with each other, or I lend Germany money, that will be denominated in US dollars. It won't be denominated in pounds or euros. And so the BIS actually has an estimate that the offshore dollar market, the Eurodollar market, is $400 trillion. So that massively dwarfs the domestic US debt by, kind of 10 to 1 or 9 to 1. Um, and so when US interest rates rise, when the dollar rises, all of these countries that are short these dollars, their expense goes up. They face interest rate, risk and also currency risk. Now, the key part is that they owe money in a currency that they cannot print. So when the dollar rises and these countries get squeezed and they default on this debt, it creates this feedback loop of, when you have a default, you have a credit contraction, and this pushes the dollar higher. Um, and so that's kind of the essence of the dollar milkshake theory. And Brent Johnson gets a lot of stick on Twitter, but he makes some, you can see this happening. Every time there's a crisis, the US responds by weakening the dollar. They don't respond by trying to strengthen the dollar. And in the 2008 crisis, a lot of people see that that the housing was a big issue, but if you look into the fine details of it, it can be argued that a lot of the problems started in the Eurodollar market, and that the a lot of the bailout money, in fact about 90% of the bailout money went overseas, and a lot of it went to these Eurodollar banks. So you can see kind of how important it is understanding the dollar, but B, why the dollar keeps rising and stays strong despite the US fiscal situation.
Alex, now tell us what that means and how it relates to milkshakes.
Well, yeah, so I haven't actually watched the film, but I believe it's a film with Daniel Day-Lewis, which is from that meme where he puts his straw over the fence and he yells, "I drink your milkshake," as he's sucking up the oil, I believe, from his competitor. And it's, the US, as this kind of the sovereign debt bubble, unravels and worsens, all of the capital flows back into the US after these years of printing money and injecting liquidity into the system. Instead of injecting, they've now put in a straw, and as they suck this liquidity through the straw, the milkshake, the America drinks the world's milkshake. And we see this in US equities, gold, and the dollar.
Gary, anything to add for this fifth thing?
Yeah. First of all, great description there. Great detailed description
Yeah,
by
very
Alex
well done.
on this. There's a very famous line from the 1970s where another country was complaining to one of our diplomats about the dollar. Similar situation to what Alex just outlined. And the response they got back was the dollar's our currency, it's your problem. Um, True, but from a foreign relations point of view, maybe not the best thing to have said. And 50 years later, people still remember it. The other thing that kind of stands out as really quirky is the dollar right now, and for decades has been everybody's flight to safety move. So when there's some sort of international problem or emergency or something really bad happens, everybody says, oh no, I don't want my money in risky assets. I want my money in safe assets. And so that flight to safety ends up strengthening the dollar and lowering treasury yields. As people buy treasury bonds, the price of those bonds goes up and the yield goes down. This is exactly what we were just talking about related to the Bank of China earlier in the segment. But where it gets really quirky is there have been times where the crisis event has actually been a crisis event in the US dollar. Like, the US has been bumping up against the debt ceiling, and there have been worries that, we would default or not pay the interest. And in those times, the dollar strengthens and yields go down. Now, that makes no sense at all. If people are saying, oh no, there's a problem with the dollar or US denominated debt, you would think that would weaken the dollar. But what happens is everybody's, instant response is, oh no, we have a problem. I don't want to hold risky assets. And they pile into the dollar. It is a completely predictable, understandable, but nutty response. The final thing that I'd add, and this is a point that I make probably once a month on this show, is Alex, I think, just gave us a great description of how these events conspire to strengthen the dollar at the expense of other currencies. And, half the people watching this are saying, well, yeah, the dollar's been really strong. When Alex is talking about Dixie, DXY is the ticker for the dollar index. It's how the dollar is performing against other large fiat currencies, right? So the British pound, the euro, the Japanese yen. And what Alex has done is he's given us a description of why Dixie, the dollar, has been strong from the point of view of a foreign exchange trader. And that's been true. Now, the other half of our audience is saying, the dollar's strong. What, are you kidding me? My paycheck is going less and less far. And have you not watched the last 4 episodes of the 5 things where you guys have talked openly about everybody saying we can't afford expensive luxuries and discretionary items? We're just spending more on, necessities. And that, it takes me back to a point we've made many times before, which is the dollar can be strong from the point of view of a foreign exchange trader, but weak from the point of view of an American consumer. And so to give it, that may sound contradictory, but here's how it makes sense. The dollar is losing purchasing power. Other fiat currencies are losing purchasing power faster. Right. And so that's the answer. It's almost like relativity. These things are in motion together. It's just one part of the equation is moving down faster than the other part. So that's why we're suffering from inflation and a loss of purchasing power, but we're strengthening, by we, I mean the dollar, strengthening against other currencies. And so that's, I think Alex gave a phenomenal description. I'm just giving a little extra color from a macroeconomics point of view around the dollar milkshake theory, which is certainly worth, hearing about and discussing.